ATA for leaving with my grandmother's rusty car and discovering a shocking secret? The autumn wind whipped through the Maple Creek Cemetery, sharp and relentless, violently tearing away the golden brown leaves still clinging desperately to the gnarled branches of ancient oak trees. Abigail stood alone. Her thin denim jacket offered little protection against the chill that seeped into her bones. Her eyes, red from too much crying, followed the slow descent of her grandmother Eleanor's casket into the cold Pennsylvania earth. Each tear that trickled down her face seemed to freeze upon touching her skin, leaving a sharp sting that mirrored the ache in her chest. Eleanor had been much more than a grandmother. She had been her foundation, her guide, her confidant, filling the roles of mother, father, and best friend after Abby's own parents had passed young. Now, with her gone, the world seemed vast and empty, and Abigail, adrift, was just a solitary figure in a sea of grief. Across the cemetery, her sister, Skylar, seemed like a shadow from another life, tall, composed, her black power suit elegant, impeccable against the somber backdrop. She didn't look like a grieving granddaughter, but rather a cold, calculating executive from her high-rise Chicago office. Her presence was polished and distant. Skylar had left their small Pennsylvania town years ago, seeking ambition in the bustling city where she built a glittering career in finance. Her visits had become rare and fleeting, each one further underscoring the growing distance between them. Skylar was fire and impulse, always climbing another rung on the ladder of success. Abigail was serene, introspective, content with the simple rhythms of small-town life. The differences, which once fueled affectionate teasing, now carved a deep, unbridgeable chasm, as cold as the autumn air that enveloped them. As the small crowd of mourners dispersed, their footsteps crunching on the gravel path, Skylar approached Abigail. Her eyes, sharp and unreadable, avoided her sister's tear-stained face, fixing on some distant point beyond the headstones. "I have to fly out today," she said, her tone crisp, professional. "Work is piling up. You know how it is." Abigail nodded slightly, her throat tight with unshed tears. "I understand," she murmured, though the words sounded hollow to her. "The will is being read tomorrow at Mr. Henderson's law office. 10 a.m. Be there." Skylar's tone was final. Without waiting for a reply, she turned and walked towards her rental car, a sleek, modern sedan that stood out like a beacon of affluence in the cemetery's dreary parking lot. Abigail watched her go, her heart sinking further. The image of Skylar's figure disappearing down the winding cemetery road only deepened her sense of abandonment, as if the last family ties were unraveling right before her eyes. The next day, the lawyer's office was a claustrophobic, stuffy room, heavy with tension. Abigail sat stiffly on the edge of a leather chair, her hands clasped in her lap, while Derek, her husband, hovered behind her, his presence radiating disapproval. Derek had never hidden his contempt for her grandmother, reducing Eleanor to a relic of bygone days. Her stories about World War II in her house, cluttered with what he called old junk, were, to him, a source of irritation. Eleanor's attachment to the past was, in his view, a flaw, and Abigail's quiet devotion to her grandmother was a constant source of frustration for him. Mr. Henderson, an older man with a weary expression and thinning gray hair, cleared his throat and began reading the will. Skylar was bequeathed a stunning beach house in Florida, a dream property, perfect for her glamorous aspirations. Abigail, however, was left her grandmother's old Ford Falcon, a rusty, dilapidated car that hadn't left the garage in years. The words hung in the air, heavy and surreal, broken only by the discreet rustle of the lawyer's papers. Skylar's eyebrows arched in an expression of surprise, mingled with a restrained satisfaction that flickered across her face. Derek let out a sarcastic laugh. "This is ridiculous," he exploded, taking a few steps forward, his face flushed with fury. "She gets a beach house and Abby gets that pile of scrap. There must be a mistake." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Unperturbed, he said, "This is the final wish of the deceased, Mr. Peterson. It is all legally documented and binding." Skylar's lips twisted into a condescending smile. "I'm delighted with the house, of course," she said, with false sympathy. "But that Ford is practically a joke. Grandma must have been getting senile." Abigail remained silent, stunned, her mind a whirlwind of confusion. Why this decision? Why leave her the car? The Falcon was a relic, its once blue paint faded and peeling, its chassis riddled with rust. As a child, Abigail loved hearing Eleanor's stories about the car, adventures on dusty backroads, and secret errands during her youth. But those memories now seemed like fragments of an old, half-forgotten dream. What was her grandmother trying to convey with such a strange inheritance? Back at their small rented house, Derek's anger erupted in the cramped living room, unleashing a torrent of venomous words as sharp as the autumn wind. "You're always the same, Abby," he yelled, advancing on her, his face contorted with rage. "You can't even inherit anything worthwhile. Who needs that old rust bucket?" Abigail tried to respond, her voice trembling. "It wasn't my fault, Derek. I didn't ask for this." But Derek was deaf to her pleas, consumed by greed and fury. "Pack your bags and get out," he roared, shoving her towards the door. "You're nothing to me anymore." The words hit her like a punch. Abigail stood motionless, shock washing over her. After 10 years of marriage, of enduring Derek's moods, his criticisms, his control, how could he discard her like this, so easily? "Where will I go?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't care," Derek snapped, his gaze cold. "Sleep on the street for all I care. We're through." With only a worn suitcase in hand, Abigail left, stumbling into the twilight, the world around her distorted by tears. The town where she grew up, which she knew like the back of her hand, now seemed foreign, its familiar streets cold and hostile. Almost without realizing it, her feet led her to the old garage behind Eleanor's now empty house, where the Ford Falcon waited. The car was a desolate sight. Its once proud frame now sagged under years of neglect, its surface corroded by rust and peeling paint. Abigail ran her hand over the cold metal, and a memory surfaced. Eleanor's voice, warm and firm. "This car is more than just metal, Abigail. It holds secrets, stories, a part of our history." Fumbling in her jacket pocket, Abigail found the car keys, carefully tucked inside an envelope. On the outside, a note written in her grandmother's elegant, slightly shaky handwriting. "This is for you, my dear. Don't be afraid." Abigail clutched the keys, murmuring to herself, "Don't be afraid." A spark of determination ignited within her. Eleanor had believed in her and trusted her with something more than just a car. Whatever lay ahead, Abigail would face it with the strength her grandmother saw in her. Her hands trembled, not just from the biting cold, but from a mixture of fear and anticipation as she approached the trunk. The hinges groaned as she lifted the lid, revealing a dark, dusty interior. The air inside carried a familiar scent: old vinyl, oil, and something deeper, like the echo of Eleanor's warm embrace. Abigail took out her cell phone and turned on the flashlight. The dim light illuminated the shadows, and her breath caught in her throat. There, nestled in the back, lay a worn leather satchel, its surface soft and aged, as if it had passed through many hands over the decades. Beside it, a small, heavy metal lockbox, its surface dull, more robust. On top, a folded piece of paper. Abigail's heart pounded as she reached for the satchel first. The leather was surprisingly supple, almost warm, as if it held the memory of those who had touched it before. Opening the clasp, she let out a sigh. Inside were dozens of black and white photographs, their edges worn, the images faded but alive with history. Young men and women, some in American GI uniforms, others in civilian clothes that spoke of wartime Europe, looked back at her. Some with tired eyes, others with faint, defiant smiles. They stood by bombed-out ruins, leaned against Allied tanks, or held equipment. On the back of some photographs, hasty inscriptions revealed fragments of stories. Robert, Jean-Pierre, Sophie, comrades on the front. Annalise, eternal memory. Among the photographs were fragile documents, commendations for Eleanor's selfless work as a nurse with an American field hospital near the front lines in France during World War II, hand-drawn maps with red circles marking unknown locations, and carefully folded letters, the ink faded but still legible. Abigail didn't yet understand the full meaning of what she held, but she felt the weight of a hidden truth, a secret Eleanor had silently guarded for decades. Her hands trembled as she turned to the lockbox. The combination dial wouldn't yield to her fingers. She hadn't found a key, and no matter how hard she tried, the box wouldn't open. Setting it aside, she unfolded the accompanying paper, a letter written in her grandmother's familiar, round handwriting, slightly shaky, as if it had been penned in haste. "My dearest Abby, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer by your side. Do not fear what you find in this car. It is not just an old relic, it is a vessel of memory, a testament to those who gave everything for freedom. Inside the lockbox, there is gold hidden from the Nazis during the war. It was used to save countless lives. Now it belongs to you. Decide its fate, but remember this, its true value is not in its shine, but in the stories it carries. And a warning, do not trust Skylar completely with this. She has always pursued wealth and status, often blind to the deeper meaning of what I have left you. This is yours alone. Be brave. With love, Grandma Eleanor." Yes, you will find my diary under the spare tire. It holds the combination and more answers. Abigail sank to her knees beside the car, clutching the letter to her chest as tears streamed uncontrollably. Her grandmother, so quiet and modest in life, had, after all, been a heroine, a guardian of secrets, a protector of history. It was almost too much to comprehend, like stepping into a narrative that seemed to belong to someone else. She stared at the lockbox. Gold? Why had Eleanor entrusted it to her and not to Schuyler, who had always seemed so much more capable, so much more confident? What was Abigail supposed to do with this legacy? Then she remembered the postscript. She delved back into the trunk, her fingers rummaging beneath the spare tire until they touched something solid. A small leather-bound journal, worn but intact. She climbed into the Falcon's driver's seat. The cold vinyl creaked under her weight. She opened the first page under the dim light of her cell phone. August 1944. France. War, fear, devastation. But we will not surrender. We will fight for freedom to our last breath. The words pulled her into a world she had never known. Eleanor's diary chronicled her life as an army nurse near the front lines, her encounters with French resistance fighters, hiding refugees, and acquiring medicine through perilous channels. Each entry was a testament to courage, determination, and an unwavering faith in humanity. Abigail read, fascinated, discovering a grandmother she had never fully understood, a woman who faced death every day with a fire burning in her heart. One account about the gold sent a chill down her spine. Before the war, a wealthy Jewish family in France, sensing the approaching darkness, had entrusted Eleanor, a young American nurse they'd befriended and trusted, with a cache of gold coins and small bars, tasking her with guarding it and using it to help others if they didn't survive. They perished in the Holocaust, leaving Eleanor as its guardian. She used some of the gold to fund escape routes, bribe officials, and save lives. "This gold is not mine," Eleanor wrote. "I am merely its steward. It was entrusted to me so that it may continue to serve good people, our shared humanity, when the time comes." The diary also contained the combination to the lockbox. Abigail read late into the night, the dark interior of the car serving as a refuge from the outside world. The diary revealed Eleanor's sacrifices, her resilience, the brutal weight of war. It was a window into a life of quiet heroism, of decisions made under impossible circumstances. Eleanor's trust felt like both a gift and a burden. Why her? What was she to do with this legacy? How could she honor it? And how would she face Schuyler, who had so casually dismissed their grandmother's memory? Exhausted but resolute, Abigail knew she couldn't betray Eleanor's trust. The next morning, using the combination from the diary, she opened the lockbox. Gold coins and small ingots glinted softly. She began calling local museums. Her hands trembled as she dialed the numbers. The county had only two, a local historical society and a small art gallery. The receptionist at the art gallery listened politely and redirected her call to the county historical society. On the other end of the line, a young historian named Dr. Marcus Thorne answered. His voice was warm and curious, and it grew increasingly enthusiastic as Abigail told him her story, the diary, the war photographs, the documents. When she mentioned the gold, his tone shifted to barely contained excitement. "Please, Miss Peterson, come to the Historical Society as soon as you can," he urged, his enthusiasm palpable, even over the phone. The Historical Society was housed in an old, preserved Victorian mansion, its faded grandeur serving as a perfect backdrop for stories of the past. Dr. Thorne, a tall, lean man in his early 30s with bright, inquisitive eyes and slightly rumpled brown hair, greeted Abigail with a warm handshake. His office was a wonderfully chaotic haven of books, maps, and yellow documents, the air permeated with the scent of old paper and lemon polish. Abigail carefully laid out the contents of the leather satchel, photographs of determined-looking soldiers and civilians, commendations for Eleanor's wartime service, maps with mysterious red circles, delicately folded letters. Dr. Thorne handled each item with reverence. His questions were incisive yet gentle, and his notebook filled with hasty notes. When Abigail showed him the lockbox and its contents, Dr. Thorne held his breath. The gold coins and bars glinted in the dim light of the office, their surfaces marked by history, their weight a tangible link to a time of sacrifice and survival. "This is extraordinary," he murmured, his eyes wide with amazement. "This isn't just treasure, it's a living piece of American and world history. A story that needs to be told." For several days, the Historical Society buzzed with activity. Dr. Thorne and his small team worked tirelessly, cataloging the discovery, analyzing the diary, cross-referencing documents with archival records, and arranging for authentication of the gold. Abigail watched it all, her heart overflowing with pride as her grandmother's story came to life before her eyes. The collection was a true historical treasure. Eleanor's diary offered rare insights into the experiences of American personnel and their interactions with local resistance networks, detailing daring missions and quiet acts of heroism. The photographs captured the faces of forgotten heroes, their eyes burning with determination. The gold, once a lifeline for the desperate, now stood as a testament to their courage and Eleanor's integrity. News of the treasure hidden in the old Ford Falcon spread like wildfire. Local newspapers ran front-page articles, regional TV crews descended upon Maple Creek, and websites buzzed with speculation. Journalists sought Abigail for interviews, historians requested her perspective, and locals shared memories of the quiet Eleanor, a serene woman whose strong character had touched countless lives, though none knew the depth of her wartime bravery. At first, Abigail shied away from the attention. Her natural timidity created a barrier. But as she spoke of her grandmother's courage, her voice grew firmer, her words imbued with pride. She was telling Eleanor's story, preserving her legacy for the world. Derek predictably reappeared when he heard about the gold. Calls and messages flooded Abigail's phone, each one dripping with feigned regret, promises of change, and poorly disguised greed. But Abigail now saw his cruelty, his manipulation, his emptiness with clarity. "Do you really think I'd come back after what you did to me?" she told him during one call, her voice firm and cold. "I'm not that woman anymore, Derek. I've found my strength." Skylar also sought her out, flying in from Chicago. Her tone was deceptively casual. "We should decide together what to do with the gold," she suggested, as if she hadn't ridiculed the Falcon as a pile of scrap days earlier. Abigail, with a bittersweet smile, reminded her of the contempt she had shown for their grandmother's memory and the car. "I've already made my decisions, Skylar," she said firmly. "The gold, the diary, the photographs, everything is going to the Historical Society to be preserved and exhibited. This isn't about money. It's about honoring Grandma Eleanor's legacy and the people she helped." Skylar's response was a furious torrent. She accused Abigail of wasting a fortune, of being naive, foolish. But Abigail disengaged. Her decision was made. She knew she was doing what Eleanor would have wanted. A choice rooted in love and respect, not greed. With her few belongings packed into the Falcon's trunk alongside the now empty satchel and lockbox, which were also part of the donation, Abigail slid into the driver's seat. The car, once a symbol of her perceived failure, now felt like a chariot of liberation. Its old engine sputtered to life, then settled into a surprisingly steady rhythm, as if a gentle reminder of her grandmother's constant presence. She drove to the Historical Society one last time, thanking Dr. Thorne and his team for their dedication. "You've done something extraordinary, Abigail," Dr. Thorne said with a warm, sincere handshake. "You've preserved an incredible piece of history. Your grandmother would be so proud of you." Abigail smiled, her heart full. She knew he was right. As she drove out of Maple Creek, the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The weight of the past was beginning to lift. The road ahead was uncertain, full of challenges, but Abigail was ready. She carried with her Eleanor's memory, her courage, her belief in a better future. She was no longer the timid woman Derek had discarded. She was Eleanor's granddaughter, a descendant of a heroine. And she too was becoming fearless. In a new city, Denver, Colorado, nestled against the Rockies, Abigail built a life of quiet fulfillment. She rented a cozy apartment in a pleasant neighborhood with windows overlooking a tree-lined street, far from the suffocating memories of her past. Her work as a paramedic at a busy city hospital gave her purpose. She loved helping people, especially the elderly, whose resilience and stories often reminded her of her grandmother. Her colleagues respected her skills and calm demeanor, and patients often greeted her with gratitude. Their smiles warmed her heart like the sun after a long winter. For the first time, Abigail felt truly free. Free to make her own choices, to shape her own destiny, to live without fear. She sometimes thought of Derek, of the years she had spent under his shadow, enduring his insults, believing she deserved them. How had she let it go on for so long? It wasn't love, she finally realized, but a trap of dependency. On his approval, his income, his false strength. Now she was her own foundation, her own strength. And that realization filled her with a quiet, unshakable joy. Skylar occasionally sent glossy photos of her Florida beach house. Gleaming white walls, a sparkling infinity pool, palm trees swaying in the tropical breeze. The images screamed success, but Abigail sensed an undercurrent of emptiness behind those carefully curated facades. Skylar never asked about Abigail's life, her dreams, her struggles. She merely flaunted her triumphs, as if still trying to prove a point. Abigail didn't envy her. She had learned that happiness isn't found in wealth or status, but in purpose, in helping others, in feeling whole within herself. The past no longer haunted her. It was now a chapter in her story, one that had forged her into the woman she was. Strong, independent, fearless. Without Eleanor, the old Ford Falcon, the diary, and the trials she had faced, she would never have discovered this strength. She regretted nothing. In her free time, Abigail delved even deeper into her family's history, inspired by Eleanor. She contacted National Archives, examined digitized military documents, and even connected online with descendants of some of the people Eleanor had mentioned in her diary. She discovered her grandmother had been a vibrant young woman, a gifted writer with dreams of becoming a journalist, dreams the war had interrupted but not extinguished. As a nurse, she had faced the horrors of battlefields to save soldiers. In her own quiet way, working with those in need, she had risked much for freedom. After the war, she returned to Maple Creek, married, raised a family, and became a pillar of the community, teaching Sunday school and volunteering, always with that quiet strength. One day, Skylar called, her voice surprisingly subdued, asking if she could visit Denver. Abigail, though wary, welcomed the opportunity, hoping perhaps to rebuild some semblance of connection. When Skylar arrived, she was different. Less defensive, more vulnerable. Over coffee in Abby's sunlit apartment, she opened up about her loneliness, about the gnawing dissatisfaction she felt despite all her material wealth. "I thought the beach house, the promotions, all of it would bring me happiness," she confessed, her voice trembling slightly. "But I just feel empty." Abigail listened, her heart unexpectedly sympathizing. "I've been there, Skylar, in my own way. But I learned that real happiness, the kind that lasts, it comes from within. From doing things that matter, from loving, from connecting with people." Skylar's eyes welled with tears. "You're right. I think I've been chasing all the wrong things." The sisters spent the next few days together, walking through Denver's parks, visiting a local art museum, even laughing over half-forgotten childhood memories. They reconnected, slowly rediscovering the bond they had lost when Skylar left for the city lights. As she departed for her flight back to Chicago, Skylar hugged Abigail tightly, a gesture so uncharacteristic it startled them both. "Thank you for everything, Abby. I love you." "I love you too, Sky," Abigail replied, a genuine smile gracing her lips. With Skylar tentatively back in her life, Abigail felt a new warmth in her chest. She was no longer entirely alone in the world. She had a sister, a fragile but renewing family connection that she hoped would endure. She promised herself she would nurture it, supporting Skylar just as Eleanor had, in her own way, supported them both. Abigail's life continued with purpose. She worked her shifts as a paramedic, continued her research into her family's past, and found small ways to help those around her. Every day, she felt her grandmother's presence, her pride, her love, her spirit. Sometimes driving the old Ford Falcon, which she'd had minimally restored for reliability but kept its weathered look, through the streets of her new city, its V8 engine vibrating like a living heart, Abigail knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. A woman shaped by her grandmother's extraordinary legacy, ready to face the world with courage, hope, and an unbreakable spirit. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.